IRA world of you've saved money and now the IRS is saying you have deferred the taxes long enough. It is time for you to start paying income taxes. You don't have to consume the money. You don't have to, your required distribution this year is 10 grand. You don't have to go spend 10,000 in the economy, but we're going to tax you as if you earn 10,000 bucks and you're going to pay us that tax money. What you do with the money is up to you. So you've got that going on.
Hey there, Stackers. Welcome to a holiday week edition of the Stacky Benjamins live on YouTube show. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. We'll announce these crazy participants in just a minute, but we're going to talk all things insurances today. You're going to be seeing behind the scenes before we actually put the music beds down, before we edit anything. So you get to see all the little rough spots, which is half the fun of making this. Feel free to join in the fun in our comment section. Say hi, tell everybody where you're from. We'll come and we'll chat with you a little bit at halftime during our trivia segment. So we're going to have just a lot of fun. I know we have a time constraint today that Doc G put on me at the last minute. Hey, by the way,
thanks, Doc.
Just to make life interesting.
I'm just going to throw you under the bus, man.
Yeah.
No,
that's
seriously,
fine.
thanks, Doc, for getting us out of here early. Appreciate it, man.
I have a thing.
Right. He said he had to study for a blood test is what he had to do. I don't know what that's all about, but all right. We're just going to get it going. So you're going to hear this in just a couple short weeks. We're recording a little bit ahead, but Doug, I think we're ready to go.
I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. On today's roundtable, we're discussing insurance. Wow, pinch me. When should you buy it and when should you take the risk? And with prices skyrocketing, how do you duct tape your insurance plans? We'll dive in with the founder of the Best Interest Podcast. Wait, don't we call this the Better Interest Podcast?
I think so.
It's Jesse Cramer. Plus, the woman who wants to help you afford all the things you might want to insure, Paula Pant. And finally, a guy with plenty of firsthand experience dealing with insurance, Doc G. But that's not all. Halfway through the show, I'll share a really dangling trivia question. Maybe I should have that checked out. And now a guy who uses his powers for good, it's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Hey, Stackers, and today I'm using my powers for a good time because we're going to have a great time, hopefully cutting your insurance costs, getting the insurances in order on this Friday. You can tell it's a Money Geek show when I get super excited that we're going to talk about insurance. I'm like, yes, what a great way to start my weekend. I can't believe it. But I also get to spend my weekend with these people, including Doug. Doug, how are you, man?
I ain't spending my weekend with you. What?
No, huh? What?
No.
Yeah. Yes.
The whole weekend now?
Let's start off with a woman joining us all the way from over in Manhattan. She is Laura Ingalls Pant today. If you're not watching us on video, it's Paula Pant. How are you?
I am great. I am fantastic. So, and jazzed about talking about insurance. Nobody ever
You are
asked me
about to
about
get-
it enough, right?
I bet.
Right?
I
It's
bet.
just not a conversation that comes up often.
Like, how come we don't talk about that at happy hour, Paula?
Yeah, exactly. 3 beers in, like, yeah, let's talk about insurance.
Yeah. So is there a rodeo coming soon? Is there you gonna tell us about the poofies?
Oh, the big poofy sleeve. So for those of you watching on or for those of you not watching on YouTube, okay, so I have this subscription to a clothing rental service called Rent the Runway. And
From the
so-
1870s?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And so among the various pieces I've rented, there's this piece that makes me look a little like imagine Little Bo Peep combined with strawberry shortcake. That's what this is giving.
I don't know. I disagree. I mean, we're giving you grief about it, but it's pretty cool.
Oh,
Do they
It is
make them
cool.
In
Would
men's?
you like to borrow it?
Hell yes, I would like to borrow that.
That's always the next question. The guy we borrowed from the Earn and Invest podcast is here, huh? Ninja with the segue. Doc G joins us. How are you, man?
I'm good, and I couldn't have done it better myself. You want to waste a little time? Change insurance policies, especially like
Oh.
homeowners. I swear to God, I mean, yes, it's a great way to save money, but be prepared for like an hour on the phone. At
Oh,
least.
file a claim, Doc. If you file a claim, they're going to make you earn that money through the time that it takes to file the claim. Speaking of that, by the way, Doug announced that you spend time with insurances. I think as a physician, just going through all the different, I feel bad, not even just for the physicians, but for everybody involved in the healthcare industry, just trying to figure out which way to bill the insurance companies to be a pain.
And insurance companies through healthcare are built to deny you, to request prior authorizations, to retroactively deny things they've already prior authorized, to change formularies. I mean, the number of things standing in your way actually is insane.
And speaking of insane, a guy who's
Another
here
great transition.
another great transition, joining us from the Best Interest podcast. I'm glad we got him back. He did not deny our claim. Jesse Cramer's here. How are you, man?
Joe, I'm doing well. It's funny. Speaking of health insurance, I mean, we just had a baby a few weeks ago, and yeah, I tried to do my homework as far as like what the cost would be, what would be covered, what would be coming out of pocket. It was a lot of homework, more homework than any individual should have to do, let alone someone who may or may not be, talking about this kind of financial stuff on a regular basis. But when I saw that you were putting this topic today, I said, it's a risky topic. It's a risky topic to bring. But here you put on this premium cast like you do every other week, Joe. And I think you're ensuring that we're all going to have a good time.
We don't every other week, dude. It's every week. Not every other week.
But the
No,
premium
every
cast.
every other
Oh.
week, not
All of the other
every
weeks.
odd week, but like each other week. How about that? But yeah, you guys missed all the puns in the meantime.
I should have just taken the compliment too. Involved in all the puns.
I
Thank
was
you very
trying.
much.
I wanted to get deductible in there. That's all I was trying to say. I just don't know how to make a deductible pun. Take it away, Joe.
I got so many questions because big congratulations in order. I saw your pictures on social media. So first of all, boy or girl, and everybody healthy?
Girl, Maeve Kathleen, a nice Irish name, and she's healthy. My wife is recovering really well, and everyone is happy and healthy. Yep.
Nice Irish name, but nobody in your family's Irish, which is strange.
We somewhere back in the day, there were some Irish people somewhere. No, my wife has a pretty good Irish side to her, and I'm sure I have some Irish in me.
So I think we all do.
We all exactly
at some
We
point.
all.
Yes, around St. Patrick's Day especially. I tell everybody that that's all Irish all the time. Man, we got a great show today. We're going to be talking about insurances, but you know what we're going to talk about first, Jesse?
Insurance?
No, before. Well, we are kind of. Yes. We're going to talk about the fact that this episode is brought to you by State Farm. If you're a small business owner, it isn't just your business, it's your life, whether you're whatever your business might be. You want someone who understands. That's where State Farm Small Business Insurance comes in. State Farm agents are small business owners too, and know what it takes to help you personalize your policies for your small business needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Talk to your local agent today. I thought it would be fun to characterize today's show as all the things insurance agents don't want you to know. And number 3 will make you LOL. I don't know. Maybe we're gonna have some fun talking insurance. State Farm people want you to save money on your insurance as well. We're gonna get to that. We have some other great sponsors. First, though, here is one more, and then we're gonna get into it. 3, 2, 1. All right, Jesse Cramer's here, joining Doc G, Paula Pant, and Doug. So let's roll. Our piece today, the inspiration, we're not going to talk a lot about this piece, but we'll link to it on our show notes at stackybenjamins.com. It comes from the Wall Street Journal. It's written by Telis Demos and Stephen Wilmont. And it's a nice electric vehicle you got there. Can you afford to insure it? And the subtitle, EVs are fast and full of technology that makes them fun to drive, but tougher to insure. I think, Doc, let's go right to you, because I think you own one of these creatures, don't you?
I own 2 of them, actually.
And do you agree it's difficult to insure your EV?
Listen, you don't get an EV to save money. You get an EV because it's a really fun ride, because they're cool cars, or you buy into this fact that electric is the future. But you're going to end up spending money. I mean, first and foremost, there costs a huge amount to insure. I remember when I did go to insure it, our numbers just jumped up. If you, God forbid, get into an accident, they cost a lot to fix. Their maintenance costs more. It is true, you might save money on charging. When I bought my car, I got free charging, so I could go and charge it for free. But you end up losing money in so many other places that ultimately it's a wash. You buy the car because you like it or you like the idea, not because you're going to save money.
So you bought 2 of them because you knew you were going to lose money, but you make it up on volume. That's why you bought the second one.
Yeah. And I'm figuring by the time I get to my 20th, I might, kind of get close to even.
This is like OG telling me to buy more Rivian because I've lost so much money. I might as well just dollar cost average down.
Dude, did you see though?
Oh yeah.
Rivian stock. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, VW decided to give them $5 billion. That'll make a lot of investors optimistic.
Big comeback. I was like, no, you can't do that. We got to keep teasing Doug. Don't have the stock come back.
Oh, I'm still so far underwater. You guys have plenty of material.
But this idea, and I did not want to start here, but I think that we should, Jesse, Doc G really is talking about, this is a cool car, an electric vehicle, but all these carrying costs. I mean, not just the insurance, but all the other things he talks about. I feel like often we buy the thing and we don't think about the true cost of that thing.
Yeah. What you pointed out there, it's certainly true across so many things other than electric vehicles. I mean, real quick, I just looked at Rivian stock, by the way. I was on the 6-month chart and I was like, oh, it did pop recently. Then I went up to the 5-year chart. Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah.
That y-axis changed.
Welcome to Doug.
No, the carrying costs. I went back and I thought of this idea. I think that was an idea from Your Money or Your Life, or one of those kind of old school fire books. And it's the idea, they call it the fulfillment curve. And the fulfillment curve, it measures the money you spend versus the actual joy that you get from it. And at some point, that curve kind of flattens out or even starts to take a negative slope. And one of the main reasons why research shows has to do with those carrying costs where, wow, you've got a garage full of 18 model cars because you're a bajillionaire. Well, you have to upkeep those 18 model cars. You have to build the space to store them. And those carrying costs just multiply to the point where you're not really happy with the money that you're spending anymore. And granted, what we're talking about today is maybe much more on a consumer level. But yeah, all the money that you spend up front, some items out there don't really have carrying costs to them, but some do. They're almost hidden in a way. And as a consumer, it behooves us to try to do that research beforehand.
I think like a lot of self-respecting English majors, I find myself to be a hoarder of books. And I've had to convince myself over and over throughout my life that what good is this book doing on my shelf when it could spark joy in somebody else's life? I'm not reading it. I'm not doing anything with it. Why is it sitting on my shelf when I could either go buy it again in 10 years or take it out from the library in 10 years when I'm actually going to read this again? Like once I'm done with it, why would I do anything with it? Why would I keep it around?
I thought that same thing, Joe. And then that little voice comes in the back of my head that says, mine, mine, mine.
I know, or I'm going to need this tomorrow.
Right.
I'm just going to get rid of it. It was amazing when we sold our house and almost all of our possessions, how few of those I regretted. Like literally a whole world full of stuff that I built up my entire life. I think there were maybe 3 things I regret parting with. 3 out of like all this stuff. Paula, you like this idea Jesse's talking about sparking joy?
I love the notion of sparking joy because the premise behind it is not what should I get rid of, but what is valuable enough to keep. And it's funny, you talk about books, and I'm sitting, for those of you watching on YouTube, literally shelves of books behind me.
Maybe that's why we're friends, Paula, right there.
But I do get a lot of joy out of so books and plants. I get a ton of joy about being surrounded by books and plants. And bonus, neither of those need to be insured.
What type of plant was that, Paula?
Oh, this is a money tree.
Money
It's a
tree.
Oh, I
tree.
thought that was something. I thought that was something different.
Oh, yeah, Jesse, you've got a money tree as well.
Money tree
See?
right there.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
5 leaves on a stem.
Right. It brings in money all the time.
That's money.
Neighbors always come over, hand her some money.
But there's man, there's not a lot I can say about car insurance. I haven't owned a car in 4 years, and it's wonderfully freeing. So, but then again, I recognize that is not practical in the United States. In most parts of the United States, that's not practical. But if you're lucky enough to live somewhere where it is, it's great.
Where do you see people most guilty of this, Doc? Like not looking over the carrying cost of things. Like I think a house, number one, right? The first time I bought a house, I'm like, oh, that's what it's going to cost. I can afford that. We went and got a mortgage. I could afford the mortgage. I could afford the monthly payment. Everything was fine. And then I went to Home Depot 17 times. And I realized that the journey had just begun. And then we start dreaming about what we really want in our living room versus the, hand-me-down furniture that we had. Then I start thinking about redoing the backyard and all this stuff. So I think a house is one, but what are some other areas of our life where we kind of don't think enough about the carrying cost of this object or thing?
So I think it runs the gamut. And so let me get a bit meta for a moment. I think when we start identifying, yeah, exactly. Me, you'd never expect it. I think when you start looking towards things to become part of your identity and you somehow feel like those things are going to fulfill you, and then you get the thing and it doesn't. And so then you need all the accoutrements that go with it. And so I think that's where you get the problem, is when you start looking at these things as this is going to help me feel enough or help me feel more secure in my identity, and it doesn't do that, you either, become rational and say, aha, I can't buy my way into happiness. But very few of us do that. Most of us say, this isn't making me feel good, but that's because I bought this nice new car. But now I don't have the, best package that goes with it. And I want the automatic driving, and I want the cool leather, and I want the better color. And then you start adding on because you realize it wasn't fulfilling you in a way you wanted to. And so I think that really, again, can have to do with almost anything we buy when we're trying to either keep up with the Joneses or trying to identify through buying things.
Well, and I think, Doc, the companies are really good at that. To your point, if you don't know what you want, companies will tell you what they want, and the 4 letters are MORE, right?
That's what, and influencers too. It's not just marketing, it's also influencers. Anyone who's trying to sell you something, whether it's them, their brand, or their product, the idea is to pull you in. And once they get you in, that's when you realize that through marketing and through social media, we realize that actually the thing we thought we were getting isn't nearly as good as the next thing.
Well, and I didn't mean to start there, but I'm glad that we did, because I think that's kind of an offshoot of this, is that you can afford the electric vehicle, but can you afford the stuff that comes with it? And I don't think we think that enough when we purchase things, even the time involved with just keeping it up. I want to transition over to the main topic here, which is this idea of insurance, right? Insurance costs through the roof for a lot of people. My mom, even today, talking about how in the next few years, they've already told her, they've warned her that the price of her homeowner's insurance is going to go up 30%. It's going to be a big number. So let's get, maybe not meta like Jordan did, Jesse, but let's kind of widen this out. When you think about insurance, what are some of those base thoughts you have when you start deciding what your insurance package is going to look like for the Cramer family?
Yeah, good question. The approach that I've learned over time and that I recommend to listeners or readers of the best interest, that kind of thing, is to understand in your personal financial ecosystem what bad things could happen that you wouldn't be able to cover or recover from using the assets that you already have on hand. Okay, I'll use myself as an example because we've had the life insurance question recently. We had a baby daughter recently. So the thought process is, well, if I get hit by a bus, or neighbor Doug and I were talking about plane crashes before recording. If a large antique plane, for some reason, the propellers die and it crashes into me on the way home, I want to make sure that is a risk that my family would have a really hard time recovering from. The grief would be brief. Let's be clear. The grief they'd get over in a week or two. But the financial impact of that, I thought to myself, well, we have this baby girl, and I want to think about the time from, and this is personal to some extent, but from now until she's, say, 22, she's out of college. And I want to think about replacing my income to the family over those 22 years. Yes, I discounted it because I'm a bit of a nerd, but that helped me understand the amount of, in that case, term life insurance that I would need, because our asset base can't replace my income for 20 years. So I think if we each apply that logic to our cars or to our pets or to our boats. I mean, neighbor Doug was talking about his, he's got a rare poison arrow dart collection that he said if he lost it, he would just be distraught. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe he needs to consult an exotic insurer for that. But that's the logic that I would approach it with.
See, he always threatens to show us the dart collection, and we're like, no, thank you. Paula?
Yeah. So my only comment is you were talking about plane crashes, but in your hypothetical scenario, you're standing on the ground and a plane crashes into you? I'm
driving a car, actually, and a plane trying to land on the highway because it's going down. It takes me out, Paula. It's been one of my fears since I was a small child.
Wow.
What's the probability? I think, Paula, this game's all about probability, and I'm thinking Jesse's the probability there might be a little outsized.
Well, I mean, insurance is suited, it's best suited for low probability, high magnitude events. So if you're driving a car and an old 1950s propeller plane tries to land on the highway but crashes into you, that is a low probability but high magnitude event.
I think that means it's your day. Like it is, or not your day. You know, yeah. Surprise. But let's talk about this more, about just broadly insurance. Doc, how do you begin your quest to get the right insurance package for your family?
I mean, some of that, as Jesse was talking about, is what are the things that I need to make sure get insured, right? So health insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on where you are, I'm actually in a place where I'm financially independent and I don't work anymore. So things like disability are a little bit less important. Things like life insurance for me are a little bit less important because we're self-insured. But so first and foremost, as Jesse was saying, you're really looking for what needs to be insured. Then I think the next thing you're looking at is what company. So for instance, I have access to USAA. I've always found in dealing with USAA in the past that they've done a really good job. So I might look at which insurers I want to look at. And then last but not least, unfortunately, you then have to decide whether you're willing to change every few years, because no matter which insurer you go with, they are going to hike up your rates. And the best way to bring them down is to switch insurers. And so the next thing you really want to look at is how long have I been with this insurer, because they're going to continuously hike rates. That's what they do.
Paula, I want to ask you about what Doc said, the opposite side of that. Where do you begin to draw the line? Well, like, where do you go? Yeah, okay, I know there's insurance for that, but I don't need this one.
Anytime that you start thinking of insurance as a substitute for saving money to pay a bill, in some type of a reasonable manner, right? So if we're talking about replacing your roof, having a homeowner's insurance with a low enough deductible that you're really hoping that it's going to cover the cost of your roof replacement, that's not what homeowner's insurance is for. Like, you as a homeowner are supposed to pay out of pocket to replace your roof every 25 to 30 years. So but homeowners insurance with a high deductible, such that if your house catches fire and burns to the ground and you've got like a $300,000 bill to pay. All right, you can't reasonably save $300,000, but you can reasonably save 10,000, right? Or 15 or 20,000. So that's the delineating line. So you hear about insurances like jewelry insurance, and unless you have some very, very, very expensive, I mean, unless you're like Queen of England, I don't see why that's something that you should be able to pay out of pocket to replace.
One of the few pop references you can reliably make, Paula.
Yes.
The royal family. Unless you're Meghan Markle. You can't, yeah. Jesse, I want to ask about that because, you know, she mentions high deductibles. Here's a problem that I always saw when I was a financial planner. I don't know if you guys see this as well. And that is that people just beginning in life, they have no money. They look at the cost of these insurances, right? Going through the roof everywhere, as Doc G said. And so they jack up their deductibles, but they haven't saved any money yet. How do you convince a young person just starting out that this is not maybe the place, or do you think it is the place to save money? I don't know.
Well, it's everybody starts at essentially square zero in some way, shape, or form. I guess some people just get a natural leg up, but for the people that you're describing there, Joe, I think there's a reason why, if you look at, some people call it the financial order of operations, or whatever your term is for what's the smartest thing I should be doing with my money next. One of the first steps in all the lists that I've seen is saving up enough of an emergency fund to cover your deductibles. That's almost always one of the first ones, because the risk that we're talking about here today, and this really is a conversation about risk, and at some point I hope we come back, because I think it's really interesting. Insurance companies are amazing at assessing risk, and it's a fun point to talk about. But the whole idea is that as a young person, and we don't have many assets, the biggest risk that we're exposed to is something where insurance might not kick in, or we would really want to have an insurance policy to cover us against that risk, so long as we can pay the full deductible first. And so, yeah, I suppose some people, Joe, probably are in a position where they don't quite have enough of an emergency fund yet to cover that high deductible. And that's a tough place to be in. And I think that's why it's the best advice we can give them is to scrap and to save and to watch their expenses, and eventually to build up that emergency fund so it can cover that deductible.
I love that, because I just have to tell people, you know, just stop eating out at restaurants for 6 months. I mean, just do not raise the deductible on your insurances, because the second you do that, you're going to get in an accident, and then it all spirals out of control before you even had a chance to start. Doug?
Yeah, a question actually for you that maybe some of our listeners might have, which is, because I hadn't thought of that. When you're factoring or figuring out your emergency fund, don't forget to figure out what your deductibles are. But you don't necessarily have to add up. Well, let me ask, do you have to add up all the deductibles across all of your insurance policies? That's a big number, and they're not all going to hit. Even though you might be out of a job, you're not going to have to make claims on every one of your. So do you just take the highest one, whatever the worst one is?
Jordan, Jock?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would suggest doing the highest deductible. And I think that's the beginning for your emergency fund. Is I think the first step in your emergency fund, your first goal is being able to cover your highest deductible. Because as you were saying, the odds are you're not going to get 2 or 3 of these at once, fingers crossed. But you should at least be able to cover your highest. And some people would argue, there's always the argument, I mean, if we want to get into real details, it's, you know, the argument for young people is, do I put my money in my 401k up to the match, or do I put my money into the emergency fund, which covers 3 to 6 months? Now, some people would suggest don't do the whole 3 to 6 months. Maybe you start with an emergency fund up to your first deductible, then you start putting your money in your 401k up to the match. And once you hit your match, you then go up back and fill out that emergency fund to cover, 3 to 6 months, if we're getting technical.
Paula, you like that order?
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about Neighbor Doug's question. I had previously thought about it in terms of this is the car insurance or this is the auto deductible, this is the home deductible, this is the health insurance deductible. But you're right, it's unlikely that all of them are going to hit at once. Like, you get into a car accident. I guess, okay.
No, your house.
I can see
you run into your house.
Yeah, yes. That's
You run into your house and end up in the hospital.
You run it.
No, guys, your house just burns down. Your house just burns down, and you're driving to work and you're crying. You look in the rearview mirror, and there's a plane coming at you while you're going down the highway.
An antique.
gonna say.
An antique.
You guys gave me grief for my plane situation, and yet you're talking about driving your own cars into your own houses, as if that's more likely.
Ask OG.
Yeah. He's got kids that have done that. Wait till your daughter gets older, Jesse. It won't be so funny when she decides she's pulling the car into the garage and maybe through it.
Or assigned parking spaces in your living room.
Yeah. Here's another thought to bring this full circle and totally throw us off. Talk about insurance going up when your child then gets their driver's license and you have to insure them on the electric car. So then it really, because then you have pretty much a young kid driving a sports car in this case. And so you don't,
And that's
you don't
where your
expect
hair
that
went.
either.
That is where your hair went. Right
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Yeah. Well, that was,
Yeah. Jesse, I want to get back to you because you made a bunch of actuaries in our audience really excited when you said, I love the way insurance companies price the insurance. And man, I hope we get back to that. So let's give the actuaries their time in the sun. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I guess what I meant was from a mathy, nerdy point of view, all I was trying to say is that insurance companies are in the business of assessing risk and pricing that risk appropriately. And no pun intended, ensuring at the end of the day that they turn a profit despite any sort of payouts that they might have to make. And so when we look around us and we say, well, car insurance is going up, homeowners insurance is going up. Why are these insurance policies? Why are they going up? Why are the premiums going up so much? Some of it might have to do with, say, just general inflation. And, we read that article that we talked about, the EV article. It talked about the cost of certain parts is higher for EVs. And okay, that's certainly true. But a big thing that this is a bit more of a theory than a fact, but follow me here. When we talk about like homeowners insurance in Florida, well, there's a lot of uncertainty about what future years' weather cycles are going to look like. And if I were an insurance company right now, I'd be looking at Hurricane Beryl. I think I'm pronouncing that right. You guys see that in the news, one of the biggest, strongest hurricanes this early in the hurricane season ever. And you say to yourself, boy, I'm not really sure what future years' hurricanes are going to look like. And when there's that uncertainty, what's a synonym for uncertainty? It's risk. Uncertainty is risk. And therefore, insurance companies have to price that into their policies, which I think is a big reason why certain types of insurance policies are inflating as quickly as they are.
Doc?
I wonder if there's a little bit of a sucker factor, though, because basically, if you have been in one insurance policy for a few years and you go to a new one, they're going to cut your rates. They always do. That's how you save money on insurance. So the question is, actuarially, was the first insurance company wrong, or is the second insurance company right? Or is the second insurance company suckering you in and they're pretty much paying for you?
There's actually,
they're more mature insured customers, and then they're going to eventually pull you up.
There's actually another reason. I don't know. Jesse, you're nodding your head. You want to take that?
Oh, no, I was just nodding because I was like, Jordan's making a really good point here, but I don't have any sort of insights.
I will tell you what the reason is, because, you got to remember that these are all state regulated, and maybe you can fool a regulator for a year or two, or maybe 3, but because it's state regulated, to make sure these insurance companies don't gouge. The worst thing I like hearing when I go into online forums is this company's ripping me off. They might be pricing it in a way that isn't competitive. They might be doing some stuff. I think it's possible for insurance agents to rip you off, but the way they do that is using a square peg to fill a round hole, right? They're using the wrong product to solve the thing because it gives them a higher commission. But when it comes to the product itself, different companies I've found cater to different types of people and cater to people with different life circumstances. And as an example, when it comes to auto insurance, I had 2 different Allstate agents tell me that the reason why you price these policies on your birthday is because different companies are interested in different bands of people. And at some time you'll have a birthday and you will exit their band of where they want to compete. They have all their advertising for one band of people. They can't advertise to everybody and be everything to everybody. Now, they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to say, hey, Jesse, we're going to raise your rates because you're not really interesting to us anymore. They want to keep getting as much money out of you as they possibly can. But when you no longer factor into this key group of people that they service anymore, that's when the rate grows. So it's less, Doc, about the insurance company than it is about the changes you've experienced in your life, whether it's age or income level or the place you move to, whatever that circumstance may be. You're looking at me like you don't believe it.
Well, I'm just saying, but I believe that. But interestingly enough, though, by changing policies, you'll all of a sudden get some
because you're interesting to another company.
Yeah.
You are entering their band. So you may exit, as an example, Allstate's band, and you may enter State Farm's band. All of a sudden you're interesting to State Farm and you weren't interesting to Allstate anymore. So, and then 10 years later, you're not interesting to State Farm anymore. Sorry, State Farm. And then you're now interesting to Geico or whoever it might be. I found that rationale that I've had explained to me maybe 30 years ago. I've never had anybody say anything different. I talked to Doc, you've talked to Amy Finkelstein before, right? The insurance, you've quoted her before.
So. Have I? I don't remember. Maybe I discussed an article.
Yeah. We had her on the show and she agreed with that assessment. Jesse?
Yeah. What do you guys think when you're talking about shopping around to different companies, comparing different companies? Have you guys ever worked with an insurance broker? Am I getting that terminology right? Someone who can get policies from or compare policies on your behalf from a bunch of different companies all at once. I mean, positive experiences, negative experiences, money saved, too expensive. And any thoughts?
Guys, Paula, what do you think about brokers?
I've worked with mortgage brokers. I've worked with many mortgage brokers. It's been so long since I have shopped for insurance. I can't actually recall the last time that to the best of my recollection, I think I just talked to an agent, but I mean, we're talking years and years ago at this point.
Yeah. I think where you see people do that a lot is with health insurance, right? So if you're talking about homeowners or car insurance, you generally don't necessarily need a broker. But when it comes to health insurance, a lot of people use health insurance brokers. And my understanding is the way they get paid probably doesn't come from you, but probably comes from the company that you buy the insurance from. So I've heard that it's very reasonable, especially if you're having issues with health insurance, to use health insurance brokers. For the rest of them, I'm not sure you gain much.
We've got a great discussion going here. I want to talk about not just let me give you my take on that, by the way, because I was pivoting to the end of the first half here. But I like brokers that look at lots of different companies. But I also like the fact that then not only do they compare the companies, but I've noticed a lot of brokers that broker a lot of different companies also have a better feel of the strengths and weaknesses of different companies and where the claims truly come in. Like they see that, this company handles claims well here and another company doesn't handle claims, where if it's an agent working with a single company, they just know what their company does and doesn't do really well. So I love talking to brokers about just the business in general. You know what I mean? Like what the landscape looks like. I want to ask, because Doc, in the second half, I want to open with this question that we'll put out there now, but we'll answer here in a few minutes, which is, you talked about comparing insurance companies. You mentioned USAA as a company. What do you guys do when you're comparing insurance companies? Like, what do you seriously look at? What are you looking for? Why are you comparing? We talked about price, and I think that's the big one, but is there something else you look at? We'll talk about that next. Along with, we got a great question. We're doing this live on YouTube. We got a fantastic question about the big insurance that nobody wants to talk about, long-term care. I want to ask you guys about that. I also want to talk about things like pet insurance and ask about that. So lots more to come. But at the halfway point of every Friday episode, we have this incredible tooth and nail fight between our three frequent contributors, OG, and we're going to keep the G's together today. Doc G, you're going to play for OG, and Paula Pant, and my mom, who never plays for herself, so she doesn't like doing the stairs. So Jesse, because she's not coming downstairs, you're playing on behalf of mom. Jesse, that means good news and bad news for you. You want the good news or the bad news?
I think I remember the bad news from the last time I was here. So give me the good news this time.
Well, the good news is you are tied for last. which is fantastic because that means you don't have to guess first. So you have 6. Paula has 6. Because Mom beat Paula last year, that means that you're going to guess in the middle. OG has opened up a lead now. He has 10 points. He's 4 points ahead. And that's why we put Doc G there, because God knows Doc G never wins anything. So
I'm the great equalizer
this week.
and we said that. I think the last 2 times you've been on, you've won, haven't you?
Not recently. I had a streak of like 2 or 3 way back.
You did
when,
have a
but
streak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see if you can get it. See if you can get it back together. All right. Doc's got 10. Jesse's got 6. Paula's got 6. Doug, what do we got going on today?
Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. It was this month, 332 years ago, in 1692, that the first 5 hangings of the Salem witch trials occurred in Massachusetts. Bored to tears while they waited on the invention of television, the public decided to string up some entertainment.
Oh,
What, too soon? Too soon? And gathered around the gallows to watch the gruesome executions. Come on, kids. It's going to be awesome. Thank God we got better entertainment now. I'd hate for anything to happen to my psychic, Irma. People tease me for going to ask Irma for help, but she's correctly predicted everything in my life since I started seeing her 2 years ago. She said I'd be successful at public speaking, and voila. She told me I'd be admired for my intelligence. Duh. She predicted I'd get even more fit than I was when I first saw her, and look at how I'm filling out these stretch pants. And she foresaw that I'd only get more handsome with age. I mean, she's a modern day Nostradamus. Or should I say Nostradamus? Huh? If only I could get her to figure out where I'll meet my next girlfriend. Today's trivia question is, how many people in total were hanged in Salem for the charge of practicing witchcraft between 1692 and 1693? I'll be back right after I see if Irma has tomorrow's Powerball numbers.
I love when we go from public hangings to Powerball numbers. Yeah. That's what we do here. Doc, have you been to Salem? Have you been to Salem?
Mm-mm. And I've never been to a witch trial either. So
that's good.
Just missed it.
Slightly before your time. Right. What do you think? 2 years of witches.
So how many were hanged in 2 years in Salem?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm remembering that they did other things besides hang them. I don't know, like, didn't they like drown them, or I don't remember. I thought they did some other things. So I'm gonna guess it's a lower number than you'd expect. I'm gonna say 5.
5 is
I think
Doc's number. You know, do you think any of them had insurance? We're here talking about insurance.
And did it cover hangings?
That's right. They had a hanging exclusion if they find you to be a witch.
If you were devil's spawn.
What drives me crazy about that time, that whole thing about them, submerging people in water, and if you died, you weren't a witch, and if you lived, you were,
and then they killed you.
Yeah, you're like, I don't.
That's a rough go, man.
That's worse than driving down the highway and you're hit by a.
You lose.
Yes, Jesse, what do you think? Doc is the number at 5, which is over 2 years.
I'm gonna go higher, but I feel like if the number was like outrageously high, then maybe it would stick out in our minds a little bit more. So
not something you think about all the time is the Salem witch trials.
Yeah. It's been a while since I thought about them. And when you guys were talking about drownings, for some reason I thought of the Monty Python skit. I mean, about is she a witch burner? Well, what else burns? Wood, and wood floats. And is she a duck? I mean, am I ringing any bells here? Anyway, some of the listeners out there are vaguely familiar with what I'm talking about, but they're probably saying I'm butchering it.
I just think it's horrible, Jesse, how the Salem witch trials brings hours and hours of comedic entertainment, except to these people, right?
It's
not good.
It was not good for them. It was not good for them. And in fact, I'm going to say it was not good for 19 of them is going to be my guess.
19 of them. All right, Paula, you got 5 and you got 19.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a hard it's a hard over under, man. All right. So what I will say is, yeah, it's I do recall hearing that in addition to hanging, one of the other ways that they would murder alleged witches is through drowning. And I think the idea was if you float, then the water is rejecting you, and therefore you are a witch. If you sink, then the water has accepted you, and therefore you are not a witch. So you still get killed either way. But if you sink,
But at least we know.
and
Um,
And she's gone.
they were. Oh, wait. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Am I back?
Or do you guys have her?
I have her.
I do.
I can hear you. You don't sound like you're coming through your mic though.
Oh dear.
No,
Yeah.
that's true. She
Yeah, I'm not hearing her.
All right. Let me. I'm gonna exit and come back. 1 second.
All right. Now I've got her.
Oh, hold
No,
on.
but it's
No,
still not
no,
coming
no, no,
through her
not through
mic.
your microphone.
Got it. Let me exit and come back. BRB.
This is what for all those of you hanging out with us live. This is you get it all here.
So what Paula's going to say is, if you start to float, they then pull you out and hang you.
That's right. Hey, we got speaking of good news and bad news. The good news is you didn't sink. The bad news is we're going to need you to step over here and yeah. Not good. Jesse, are you getting any sleep?
More sleep than I expected. Yeah,
Oh, that's
which is
good.
nice. And my wife is taking on the brunt of the challenge, which I'm extremely grateful for and trying to make up for in other ways. But yeah, it's a little bit of a give and a take.
My twins are still like this at 28. My daughter is a night owl, and my son gets up very early. And they were like that when they were newborns. So my son was always up at 3:34 in the morning, and my daughter would go to bed at like midnight. So we got both ends. It was cool.
Wow.
It was great. Paula.
yes. All right.
All right. All right. So start off with the if you sink, if you
Yeah. So yeah, if you so 3, 2, 1. But the reason they were reluctant to do a float test is because if a person sank and therefore was exonerated from being a witch, there would be this huge public outcry because then the public would know that they had accidentally killed an innocent person. So in order to avert that, then you may as well hang them. Right?
Yeah.
And then there would be no public outcry because you wouldn't run the risk of exonerating an innocent person.
Are you saying life is all about going into it with no apologies?
Well, it was basically a PR. It was like a PR calculation, right?
Right.
There's if hanging, then no negative PR. If
Right.
floating, then there is assuming a 50-50 probability of she drowns or she doesn't. There would be a 50% chance of negative PR. So
I could see when the first person sank, they all turn to the guy and go, "Earl, I don't think you thought this out enough." Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. So what's your number, Paula?
So I'm going to guess that more people were hung than were floated in the water. So I'm going to go with 20. I'm going to take the over.
Take it going even more. All right. We've got 5. We got 19. We got 20. We'll see who's right in just a second. 3, 2, 1. Doc, you started off saying you thought the number's a lot lower than people think. Clearly, your number was a lot lower than what Jesse and Paula think. You've got 5 way short of the number they had. You thinking maybe this mythology is a little outsized, or you think you're maybe not going to win this one?
Well, I always think I'm not going to win this one. So let's be honest with that first. But I don't know. I don't remember it being a huge number, but I don't know, maybe there were many nameless, witches who died, and, we just don't talk about it.
Jesse, you had 19, which sounded a lot different than Doc G's until Paula joined you, capping your upside, but you still feel good. You think it's less than 19?
Yeah, now you might accuse me of witchcraft here, but I had this gut feeling that Paula was going to guess 20, and I kind of wanted the under. So that's why I went with 19.
That is. I think we might have to float Jesse.
Oh, I float. I float. The water rejects me.
Well, then we got to do the second one, which I don't know. I don't like this. Is a kinder, gentler show. Paula, you feeling good with the upside?
Yeah, I feel decent with the upside. I was hoping that Jesse would guess 10 because I would feel really confident if like my guess could be 11 or something. But you make do with what you have.
We are so cynical. We think there's lots of witches, tons of people. We're going to find out how many though. Who's right here, Doug? Who's taking home the win?
Well, hey there, stackers. I'm soon to be lottery winner and guy who's just hanging around Texarkana, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Hey, speaking of hanging around, God, really, Lisa? That's what you could come up with? The first person to be charged in the witch trials of July 1692 was Bridget Bishop, who wins the prize for being accused of the most counts of witchcraft of everyone hanged that year. Her offenses included having dubious moral character, hanging around taverns, not literally, that hanging part came later, and dressing flamboyantly. Good thing those trials are over with because I wouldn't last a week in that town. Today's trivia question is, how many people in total were hanged for the charge of practicing witchcraft between 1692 and 1693? The answer? Although burned alive at the stake is a phrase that's become synonymous with the Salem witch trials, no convicted witches were ever burned in the United States. Nearly all were hanged, and one person, a man, was slowly crushed to death with rocks, like a weighted blanket experiment gone really wrong. After the first batch of 5 were executed in July 1692, that part was in the question, Doc, people continued turning in their neighbors as witches, which probably just to have something to do. I'm glad we're all living much more in harmony today. Doc G was under by 14 and Paula was over by 1 because between 1692 and 1693, a total of 19 people were executed for the dubious crime of
Perfect
witchcraft,
score.
which means Jesse is our winner because of his stealthy Googling skills.
I know how this looks.
It looks pretty damn bad, dude.
I know. You got to haul him out back and see if he floats.
I know how this looks. Can I share my screen with you guys? Can I share my Google
person
Chrome
who did
history
this
with you
has
guys?
never been invited back.
Just make sure you get rid of all the porn first.
First the terrible jokes, and then out of all questions, a witchcraft question.
Well,
Gets
let's
it
look
right.
at the positive side. We made sure that OG didn't get it.
That's right. Yes. Team effort there. Nice job, Jesse. Time for the second half of this discussion, brought to you by depositaccounts.com. Doc, you know what happens when you go to depositaccounts.com?
What happens, Joe? I'm dying to know.
You find out that those brick and mortar banks might not have the best interest rate for savings accounts, checking accounts, or for CDs. So if I go to depositaccounts.com, I'm going there right now as we're recording this. It says you can compare more than 275,000 deposit rates from over 11,000 banks and credit unions, all for free. The top 1% of all savings accounts in the United States this week, down a little bit from when we've recorded this previously to 4.94. It was up right around 5%. So a little bit lower, but here's the big kicker. The national average savings account pays only 0.5%, 0.51. So you can actually earn some serious money just by looking at that emergency fund and where you're keeping it by going to deposit accounts from LendingTree at depositaccounts.com. All right, let's dive into the second half of this. I mentioned that I want to open with this whole discussion about insurance companies and Doc, I'll start with you because you brought this up. You're like, USAA. And I like USAA, so I might go. What do you really look for in an insurance company besides that cheapest rate?
I mean, it's always claims management. So my family's used USAA for years, and almost every time whenever we had a claim, they were easy, they paid in full, you didn't have to argue with them, etc. I've also had other companies, Allstate to name one, that I used, and actually we had our house got robbed and we had to fight with them on everything. And it was a painful process. So not only are you dealing with the issues of the trauma of having someone break into your house, but then you've got to argue. And we ended up arguing for 6 to 12 months.
Oh.
Same thing happened with another insurance company where my in-laws' house flooded and they were consistently giving us lower estimates than we could find people to do the work for. And it was just, it's painful. It's about the claims. And some would argue even paying maybe a premium if you have a company that really pays the claims well.
Paula, this is why whenever somebody tells me, well, I just go with the cheapest rate, like I roll my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate that getting getting the insurance companies to do the thing that they say they'll do, like to fulfill their end of the bargain, is as difficult as it is. But and I've story after story that I've heard is like that.
This is
So
this is 100% Jesse. The first thing I look for. In fact, the reason why I said that having State Farm be our sponsor of the Friday show is because of the claims experience, bar none. And State Farm probably doesn't want me to say this out loud, but I'll say State Farm doesn't have the cheapest insurances. State Farm is beatable when it comes to rates. I know they're not going to like that, but I'll tell you what, the reason I said yes is because their claims coverage is incredible. And their reputation is Jake from State Farm is there, right? I mean, the reason they do that in their advertisements is because you need these people and bam, everything gets taken care of. And obviously every company has, I'm sure I'm going to get letters, people tell me how much they hated State Farm and they had a problem. You're going to have problems with any company that big, but generally when you look at the big numbers, claims experience, what else do you look for, Jesse, when it comes to your insurance company? Anything?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, my first answer when you asked this question before the witchcraft break was just like service in general. But I think claims management is just a big part of the service model. The idea of when I call, am I going to be on 5 minutes of hold, or is there a human I can talk to, and how do they treat me, and is the process easy? I think Doc G and Paula were right on. The biggest part of the process is, will I get the money that I expect to get? But I just think it's interesting how the insurance model in general is a business where, and there might be other businesses like it, I'm curious if anything comes to your guys' minds, where the company that you're hiring still is kind of incentivized to work against you in some pretty big ways. And so therefore, right, some companies out there have realized that probably the better long-term play is to take the high road, like Warren Buffett would say, and actually cooperate with their customers and make them long-term customers. Other companies out there are probably taking the low road, as it were, and saying, well, if we can not pay out on this claim, at least it's more money in our pocket today.
I think you guys are missing the most important factor when it comes to insurance, and that is the quality of their TV commercials. I mean, basically,
do they have an emu?
Yes,
there
exactly.
an emu?
If they have an emu.
Gecko? I don't know.
There was a cool episode of Freakonomics recently about mascots getting in trouble, or not mascots necessarily, but spokespeople. And specifically, they mentioned Subway and Jared and that whole saga.
Jared.
But one thing they talked about was like, there's a reason why Geico has an animated lizard. And the idea is the lizard will never, ever get in trouble. So I just thought that was kind of cool.
That is interesting. They're like, their liability is less. Insurance companies like taking care of their insurance. Like they got the Geico as insurance, or the Gecko as insurance, I guess, not the Geico. Geico as the Gecko. Boy, that's tough. There's another thing though, Jesse, that you brought up, even with your question around brokers. If I've got an insurance agent that will teach me which insurances to cut and which insurances to have, and does a really good job of just explaining the landscape, I will pay more for that too. I'm definitely, if somebody will instruct me about how this actually works, I'm all for having those people on my team, which is sad because I feel like that doesn't happen a ton. I feel like with a lot of insurance agents I've had, that education has been lacking. I remember when my house got robbed, I had an insurance broker at that time that I thought was pretty good, but I remember calling them, and Cheryl and I are both just distraught. We're in Chicago and our house in Texarkana has been broken into, and the police are at our house and our neighbors at our house. I call the insurance agent. The insurance agent just goes, "Yeah, you don't call me for that. You call this 1-800 number." And I was like, dude, this is not the time to tell me to call a 1-800 number. At least get on a joint phone call with me and talk to, even if that's what I do, and I dropped them immediately. I was like, nope. So it wasn't even the claims experience as much as the fact that I wanted somebody to walk me through it. I want to talk about some of these insurances that we find either have really big fans or really big detractors against. And that one I brought up earlier, pet insurance. Paula, what do you think about something like pet insurance?
It depends on how much money you have and how big your savings account is and how much leeway you have within your budget. If you have enough money that you could, so imagine you walk into the veterinarian's office with your pet, and the vet says you're going to need this $10,000 procedure. If you're like, I'm not even thinking about it. Yes, 1,000% yes, right? Cool. You don't need pet insurance. But if you're like, oh, you can keep it, right? Then yeah, get the pet insurance. So basically, that's a long way of saying, do you have enough money to pay out of pocket, or without it creating a huge upset in your financial life, or not?
Jesse?
So I want to piggyback on what Paula said there, only because I think there are some people out there, and I've answered this question before for people, and I've approached it from the avenue of, for lack of a better term, how in love with your pet are you? And because I think there are some people out there, like we fostered a dog and we adopted her ourselves, and she is a part of our family and we love her. That said, I do think there's a price point for certain surgeries above which we have to have a really hard conversation, like a really, really hard conversation. And I wouldn't want anyone to have that conversation, but there does come a point where we say, are we going to spend $10,000 to keep this animal alive? And for some people, it's an easy yes, like automatic. They won't think twice about it. It's like their child. They would spend any amount of money. And I think that person would benefit from pet insurance. Like if you can pay $40 a month for the rest of the pet's life in order to prevent having to pay $20,000 out of pocket for cancer procedures later in the pet's life, I think the math works in your favor. But on the other hand, if you're the kind of person who say, hey, we've got 8 kids at home and we're trying to put food on the table, and if Roscoe needs a $3,000 surgery, he's 10 years old, he's lived a good life, I think in that case, maybe pet insurance, maybe you don't need it. It's a very hard thing. It might get controversial. I might get some hate mail for this, but I think from the numbers, I think that kind of makes sense.
Every time we talk pet insurance, we get negativity, by the way, because people are definitely on one side or the other of this one. And it totally, to your point, depends on the person. Doc, you're looking like you're about to say something.
I was just saying that, pet insurance is not even the question. It's more, the pet life insurance, long-term care pet insurance, disability pet insurance. I mean, this is
plain pet insurance.
Your cat just has to. Your cat's walking down the road, looks behind him. There's an antique plane coming at him.
My broker told me I needed all those things. So,
I mentioned Amy Finkelstein earlier. She is not only an industry analyst, but insurance industry analyst. She also is an MIT professor. I'm going to link to her episode because she walks through a lot of these different insurances. And what she says really goes to both Jesse, what you and Paula mentioned, but it also, with pet insurance in particular, pet insurance is one of the few types that the people that buy it are the people who are more likely to use it. Like if you purchase automobile insurance, you're likely to not want to use it. You purchase homeowners, you don't want to use it. You purchase pet insurance, you are clearly a pet lover. You have so much of your life invested in this pet. You see it as a complete member of the family, not a partial member like Jesse does. Like, I don't know. If it was grandma, we'd do it. But for Fido, nope, you're gone. For those people, they're going to spend the money, which is why her analysis has been, it isn't a math problem anymore. It just, because you will not, quote, come out ahead with pet insurance. You will have peace of mind because of pet insurance. She also talked about dental insurance being very, very close to that as well. Paying out of pocket versus having insurance for most people, about the same, but the dental insurance gives you a lot of peace of mind. And once again, I'll link to that in our show notes. Let's talk about this big issue on the other side. Well, but before we get there, what do you guys do with the rental car company? Jesse, let's stick with you for a second. They got all these insurances for your rental car. What do you do with the rental car counter? Do you take those insurances?
April 2023, Raleigh-Durham Airport. I land hours after my wife, and it's my job to pick up the rental car. And the Hertz person was very smooth and just, yep, this. I assume you want to say yes to these things. I go, yeah. My wife set it up. Yep. Turns out I said yes to all the insurances that were covered by my wife's Chase Sapphire credit card anyway. So then I had to call Hertz after the fact and say, I know I said yes to all those things a week ago. I really meant to say no. And thankfully, the very nice Hertz person retracted all those fees. So what I would say is a lot of people, if you have a credit card with some oomph, which if you're a member of this personal finance space, maybe you do because you've heard about people talking about points and hacks and this and that, there's a good chance that you might have really good rental coverage anyway through as a credit card benefit. And that way you can say no to everything at the rental counter.
Paula, when you have a car, it's a rental car. Are you on that train?
So my credit card covers everything, but I have never heard of a credit card company that, of a rental car company that will bill you and then retract the payments. That's incredible. That makes me want to rent from Hertz.
It was witchcraft.
Wow. That's absolute witchcraft. Yeah, I reject all of the insurances because my credit card covers everything. So it would be redundant to have any more.
Jesse waved his hand and went, I am not the premium you're looking for.
Wow.
It was over. For anybody, Paula doesn't even get that reference, has no idea what the hell we're talking about.
I'm not the wait, what's the original? These are not the droids you're looking for?
Yeah.
Wow, Paula.
I've never seen the movie. I don't even know which movie it is. I assume
She's not sure which droids.
But I've heard the reference in pop culture enough.
Yeah, it's from Sleepless in Seattle, Paula.
Let's go the other direction. Let's talk end of life and this idea of long-term care, catastrophic illness. Doc, how do this is a big problem in financial planning. Where do you come down on this idea of long-term care?
I think a lot of people can't afford it. And so we all know the story. Historically, it was reasonable. Everyone went out and bought it. The insurance companies found they were paying out way more than they had budgeted for and increased cost of long-term care. And often the long-term care costs can go up after you have the policy. So you don't know what the costs are going to be from year to year. There are some interesting ways around it. There are some life insurance policies that have a long-term care insurance rider, and people don't actually have an interest in the insurance policy, but buy them for the rider. I think the grand majority of people, whether they like it or not, are going to end up self-insuring. This is one of those places where it'd be nice if there was a legislative change, and some states have looked at doing that because the grand majority of people just can't afford it. It's just too high of a premium for them.
But Paula, even though I agree with everything that Doc's saying, there's that phrase, hope is not a strategy. So just because you say no to long-term care doesn't mean the risk still isn't there. And to Jesse's point earlier, this is all about risk management. When you look at the numbers, the chance that you may have an assisted living situation is still pretty big. So in the absence of insurance, what do you do?
Yeah, this is one of those low probability, high magnitude events, except I'll put an asterisk there. I'm not even sure it's that low of a probability. It's kind of like a medium probability and high magnitude event. So in a perfect world, it would be great to have a long-term care insurance, but given the cost of that, a lot of people, I'll tell you, my parents have told me, they've said, if we ever get to the point where we need people around the clock to take care of us, we can't take care of ourselves. They said, take us to Kathmandu. That's their plan. Take us to Kathmandu, and we will spend the end of our lives there.
And if you're a United States citizen, there is a plan for you. It's called spend down all your money and then get taken care of by Medicaid. You can go to a nursing home. A lot of these nursing homes are very similar to the people who have insurance go to or pay out of pocket go to, and they're Medicaid beds. It might not be the ideal outcome, but it is an outcome that's not catastrophic in the sense that you'll be destitute on the streets.
Lisa Curry, the comedian that helps us write our shows, Lisa, when she made her appearance, we asked her about long-term care. And if you remember, Doug, she said that if she got to the point where her parents needed it, they lived on a lake, she'd take them to the end of the dock and just push them off.
It's so humane. I love the way it's so serene, just a peaceful evening.
Wait, that's a witchcraft thing.
Say, what if they float?
What if they float?
And if they don't float, well then.
That's what the cinder blocks are for on the wheelchair.
Oh no. Jesse, long-term care?
Yeah, my understanding of the long-term care universe is exactly what Jordan had said, which is that in recent years. Not only have the prices gone up, but as insurance companies were realizing that they had signed up for liabilities that they couldn't necessarily match, that people who had pre-existing long-term care policies weren't necessarily getting the benefits paid out that they were expecting. So it was just like a not ideal scenario all the way around. Medicaid planning is a thing. It's semi-controversial, I'll tell you that much, from a moral or ethical point of view, because the Medicaid planning, when you hear that term in financial planning, usually what someone is talking about is ways to hide and or obfuscate assets from the IRS, usually through some sort of trust, in order to make someone's net worth appear less than it is, because the assets are no longer theirs. They're in trust, or they've been gifted away, or something like that. So then the person could qualify for Medicaid benefits, even though they still have some sort of tacit control over those assets that they recently hid. But it is something that a lot of people do take advantage of, or they think ahead on. So it's not a great scenario any way you cut the cake, because these long-term care facilities are so unbelievably expensive. I don't know if you guys have gotten the details before, but it's not uncommon.
Oh, they're horrible.
See,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, $15,000 to $20,000 a month in our area.
Right. Same. That's what I was going to say. 5 figures a month easily. So it's tough. It is a tough situation.
I know for a while, I don't know if there still is. I haven't been that closely related to it, but I do know that for financial professionals for a while, if you help somebody with Medicaid planning, you were culpable, and the government could go after you as well if you help people hide assets. So
yeah, all I know is that the situations where I've heard of it, there's always a trust and estate attorney involved.
Yeah.
Which right. I don't know if that's because it is such a legally tenuous situation that you definitely want a lawyer in there, but it's just the fact that we have to go, that some people go to those extremes, for lack of a better term, in this situation, just kind of shows you what we're dealing with here.
It does. And that's a great point. That shows you how expensive it is, and how just thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to Kathmandu? Am I going to have somebody push me off the dock? Like, what am I going to do? Is I'd rather handle that when I'm younger and not worry about it later on.
I will make a plug for Kathmandu. You can you can hire with US dollars in Kathmandu. You can live really well. You can hire a huge team of people who can help you. I mean, it's actually, if you've got US dollars, it's a great life.
That's our Kathmandu real estate professional and travel agent, Paula Pant, right there.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I do think that there's a geo arbitrage could be a more popular solution.
Well, this is a fantastic discussion, and obviously there's still a lot more for people to do, but I hope that everybody who's hung out with us, that you were able to take some things from this to get your journey started, talk to some of the right professionals, make some good decisions, and hopefully come away with better insurance coverages. I think it's, on one hand, we want to have cheaper insurances, but definitely when that plane's coming down the highway at you, Jesse, you want to make sure that you're covered. So at the very least, let's talk about what's going on where all of you are. We'll have our guest of honor go last. Doc, what's going on at Earn and Invest this week, man?
Earn and Invest interviewing John Hope Bryant from Operation Hope, and we are talking about his book, Financial Literacy for All. Fascinating.
I love this man so much. Yeah. I love this man so much.
He is a history buff, and so he takes everything that's going on today and just helps you see it through the lens of history. And it's just, he's an incredible guy, a fun conversation.
Yeah, if you want to come out fired up, listening to a great interviewer, Doc G, interview John Hope Bryant. Holy cow, that's a powerhouse. Speaking of powerhouse, what's going on Afford Anything, Paula? You got Laura Ingalls Wilder coming on?
I know that's just, I'm just cosplaying Laura Ingalls Wilder. Really, I'm cosplaying Little Bo Peep mixed with strawberry shortcake.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Yeah. But let's see, on the Afford Anything podcast. So Jim Quick, he is an expert in improving, in accelerating your learning, improving mental cognition, memory, focus. So our interview with Jim Quick recently aired. So if you want to learn how to improve your memory, improve your focus, learn faster, read faster, any of that, it's one of my favorite interviews that we've done.
It's
There's-
always when I hear somebody, Paula, that has a name like Jim Quick, and
Right?
he's an expert at going faster.
faster. Yeah.
If he changed his name, or if he really just said, I got to take advantage of this.
Right. Yeah, Jimmy Slow. Right.
Right.
No, I think I remember reading somewhere that people are more likely to have careers that reflect their last name. Like, if your last name is Nail, then you're more likely to be either a carpenter or a manicurist.
Or a gigolo.
Your last name is Pornhub,
Yeah, most people don't know that's a family name, Doc. It was Bill Pornhub. He's like, what are we going to call this? Well, yeah, they call it Walmart, so we might as well call it Pornhub. Paula, we met somebody like that. I didn't actually go up and meet her, but there was somebody who helps influencers who was in the audience when you and I were at the conference together in Boise recently, and her last name was Profit.
That's
Remember
right.
that?
Yes.
Profit.
She helps online entrepreneurs, and her last name was Profit.
Yeah. And then I'm like, come on, no.
Yeah, and the dancer's name is really Candy.
And anyway, so Jim Quick, that does sound really interesting, Paula. And anytime we can make decisions faster, I think is an issue. I remember Tony Robbins talking about that the thing about successful people is they just make decisions quicker.
Right. Yes, exactly. You have to make a lot of decisions. So make them fast, move on. But in order to do that well, you have to read a lot. You have to take in a lot. You have to, and your cognition has to be sharp. So he teaches how to sharpen your cognition.
Jesse, thanks again for hanging out with us, especially with all the stuff going on in your life. Congratulations on the expanding family. It's always just new dad. That's so exciting. It's just a great, great time. I remember those times, but I will still say better you than me, pal. But what's happening at that Better Interest podcast of yours?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on again. The Best Interest podcast. We recently, I think just today, released an episode with Andy Hill to talk all about the pros or the cons, the good things, the bad things that you can do with your money as a new parent. Ways to save some money as a new parent, ways to hopefully not spend too much, or maybe to prepare for the expenses of being a new parent. So that's a fun one. And then before that,
talk about, by the way, nice guy. Is there a nicer guy on earth than Andy Hill?
I think one of my first interactions with Andy Hill was seeing him and Paula Pant on stage at FinCon together.
Oh, yeah.
Austin 2021.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It's great. But yeah, Andy was a wealth of knowledge. We're very happy he stopped by and shared his wisdom with us.
Awesome. And that's on the Best Interest podcast. I was kidding about Better Interest, which I will continue to do, but the Best Interest podcast, wherever finer podcasts are listened to. Take a second, everybody, right now, and just pause this and subscribe or follow Best Interest, Earn and Invest, and Afford Anything. Coming up with us next week, a full slate of shows again. Everybody have a great weekend. Doug, take it from here, man. What should we have learned today?
Well, Joe, here's what's stacked up on our to-do list after today's episode. First, take some advice from Jesse. When you're figuring out how much you need in your emergency fund, make sure you factor in the highest deductible you have amongst your various insurance policies. Second, take a note from Paula. Before you commit to a big purchase, be sure to consider the long-term total cost of ownership. And if you can't hack it, geo-arbitrage your butt to Kathmandu. But the biggest to-do, geo-arbitrage is my new favorite phrase now. I love that. The biggest to-do, never ever tell Joe's mom that your psychic said she should cook for you more often. She will not take it as a compliment, no matter how much you tell her you like her fried bologna flaps. Thanks to Jesse Cramer for joining us today. You'll find Jesse's Best Interest podcast wherever you're listening to us now. Jesse's other show, the Better Interest podcast, only lives in Joe's head, and you don't want in there, let me tell you. We'll also include correct links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. Thanks to Paula Pant for hanging out with us today. You'll find her fabulous podcast, Afford Anything, wherever you listen to finer podcasts. Also, thanks to Doc G for joining us today. You'll find the incredible Earn and Invest podcast wherever you go to listen to podcasts to invest in yourself, like Spotify, Apple, Overcast, and wherever the 3, 2, 1. And wherever that place is you're listening to me right now.
Awesome. Monica, you're right. Pet insurance has changed. And as I mentioned, just not a great deal, but not a horrible deal. It's more about your pet. And Andrea says, witchcraft in action when you were gone, Paula. Said Paula's now invisible. Yeah, hold on just a second, Doc, because we got to say goodbye so Doc G can leave. Everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. And contributors, just hang on for 1 second. We'll see you guys later. All right, let me stop.